Every year, to mark the summer solstice, thousands of dogs are slaughtered for consumption at the Dog Meat Festival in southwest China. In the United States, the lifespan of dairy farm cows is shortened by about 75% due to exhaustion, infection, and other inhumane practices. According to a video, workers at Maple Lodge Farms in Canada have been caught crushing chickens' heads in cages, as well as burning them while still alive. These are just a few instances of animal cruelty that are being carried out around the world today. Animal cruelty, defined by the Humane Society, is either the deliberate abuse or simply the failure to take care of an animal. Animal cruelty affects not only the beloved pets, but also includes farm animals and wildlife. There's a difference between cruelty and neglect. Cruelty is the direct harming of an animal, such as beating or setting it on fire. Neglect is withholding anything necessary to life, such as the obvious things like food and water, but also by not providing shelter from the environment or by leaving an animal alone for extended periods of time. Both of these can cause the maiming or death of the animal and can be prosecutable by law. While most people would agree that either abuse or neglect are cruelty, not all circumstances or places in the world abide by these same ideals. As Cesar Chavez explains, we need, in a special way, to work twice as hard to help people understand that the animals are fellow creatures, that we must protect them and love them as we love ourselves. Therefore, the purpose of this speech is to inform, as well as to compare, the different treatments and protections of animals in China, in the United States, and in Canada.
Today I'm going to be talking about animal rights in the People's Republic of China. When asked, most people would assume that animal rights in China is not something as important or as enforced as it is in other developed countries. Given that there are currently very lax laws in place and even lesser enforcement of these laws, most people make the mistake of looking at Chinese culture as an explanation for the current treatment of animals, when in reality, abuse of animals in any form is not something which is a historical trait of Chinese culture. Historically, dogs were treated very well, with accounts of Chinese emperors executing anyone who stole Pekingese, an ancient breed of dog once favored by Chinese royalty. Most accounts refer to the rule of Chairman Mao as the beginning of the ideology that animals and nature were resources to be used versus resources that were equal. At that time, according to animal rights activist Dr. Peter Lee, sympathy for the downtrodden was considered a Western value and seen as rebellious during Mao's rule. China is currently the largest farming nation, the largest exporter of fur, and the largest meat-consuming nation, consuming over twice as much meat as the United States annually. Recently, there has been a new amendment to the Wildlife Protection Law introduced in 1988 that would recognize the concept of animal welfare in China for the first time. Professor Chang Jiwen, an academic at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences Institute of Law, stated that animal welfare within the Wildlife Protection Law is a major milestone in the history of global wild animal protection, as the vast land of China hosts one of the widest ranges of wildlife in the world. Some endangered species are protected under the mainland law, but the report said there was no specific offenses to punish people who harmed or were cruel to wildlife. This article of legislation also lacks protection for non-wild animals, including pets and farm animals. Chang said that authorities also plan to revise regulations controlling animal habitats, but did not elaborate. International animal welfare charities have long since criticized the authorities on the mainland for not doing enough to protect the wildlife and domestic animals from cruelty and abuse. Their complaints include the demand for China for often endangering animals as food or ingredients in medicine. Isabel Zhang, China manager for the British-based animal charity Act Asia, said the step included the general concept of animal welfare and legislation was a huge step forward, but pets and farm animals should also be included to give them greater protection. The mainland lacked a legislation to punish people who were cruel to animals or who exposed them to unnecessary harm, said Zhang. While the exact benefits are yet to be seen, this could at least help generally advocating for the protection of animals, she said. Every year between the 21st and the 30th of June, in the city of Yulin, there is a lychee and dog meat festival where as many as 10,000 dogs are eaten in celebration of the summer solstice. This festival is something that has long caused an uproar from animal rights activists globally due to the treatment of dogs during this festival. Humane Society International, or HSI, and Chinese animal activist groups helped to save hundreds of dogs and cats by purchasing them from traders. HSI said that the Chinese authorities are turning a blind eye to dog meat trade and blatantly relies on criminal activity to sustain it. Illegal slaughterhouses, without license to operate, and the stealing of pet cats and dogs from towns and cities. Many of the dogs rescued were still wearing their collars, they say. They've also said they've seen all major dog breeds coming to the rescue shelters, some of them obviously someone's pet. And there were also a lot of cats and tiny kittens rescued. They also said that they know only a small number, compared to thousands, were rescued out of the thousands that had already suffered and died. But every life saved is precious. China is also the leading exporter of illegal wildlife artifacts, including ivory. However, ivory sales have declined in recent years. China has clearly a significant amount of work to do in respect for animal welfare and rights. But with the amendment of 1988's Wildlife Protection Law as its first step, the movement for better treatment of animals is maturing at a faster pace than anyone ever expected in the People's Republic of China. Now that I've spoken about animal rights in China, we will move on to the subject of animal rights in the United States of America.
These are the four most important laws and acts that are here in the United States. The first is the Animal Welfare Act. Now, this was passed in 1966. It deals with the regulations and standards for the humane care and treatment of certain animals that are either exhibited to the public, bred for commercial use, used in medical research, or transported commercially. These facilities are required to also have adequate housing, sanitation, nutrition, water, and veterinary care. The next is the Horse Protection Act. The Horse Protection Act deals with the prohibiting of sword horses from participating in shows, sales, or auctions. Now, soring is the cruel or abusive practice used to accentuate a horse's gait, or its walk or its strut. It is accomplished by irritating and blistering a horse's forelegs with chemical irritants. The next is the Humane Methods of the Slaughter Act. This act is a proper treatment and humane handling of all foods that are slaughtered in a USDA-inspected slaughter plant. However, it does not apply to chickens or other birds. The next is the 28-hour law. This law provides that animals cannot be transported across state lines for more than 28 hours without being unloaded for at least 5 hours of rest. Now, this talks about the animal farms. The meat, dairy, and egg industries are known to have the most abusive cases in the United States. Even though there's a lot of abuse cases, these animals have no minimal protections in our legal system. The next is the improper treatment of poultry. So far, there is no federal legislation currently that exists that provides the humane slaughter of poultry. The Slaughter Act does, however, state that animals need to be stunned into unconsciousness and rendered insensible to pain prior to the slaughter. The law also permits ritual slaughter in which the animal is not rendered unconscious before slaughter. Next is the rare prosecutions. This deals with the fact that even though there are a lot of cases with these anti-cruelty laws, there is no real investigations that have been going on. And this is because these things mostly happen behind closed doors. However, California, Florida, and Colorado have banned some forms of confinement, and also battery cages, and the gestation crates. And then PETA. PETA is the most known in America as the largest animal rights organization in the world, with more than 3 million members and supporters. PETA focuses on the attention in the 4 areas in which the largest numbers of animals suffer, which is the clothing trade, laboratories, factory farms, and the entertainment industry. It is also known for its work in public education, cruelty investigations, research, and its protest campaigns through animal rights. Now that I've talked about the animal rights here in the United States, here is it for Canada.
In Canada, they have a more strict rule for animal rights, and even though the animal rights are very important, I noticed that even farms, we're having the same problem as in China and the States. It's behind closed doors, and no one's really watching. So for starters, I have the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act. Now that is in British Columbia, and it's with the SPCA. And it gives them drive powers. Now they can seize evidence if they see fit. They can get warrants. They are allowed to basically just investigate and look for situations where animal cruelty is happening. Now, defining animal cruelty, a lot of people think that it's physical abuse, you're not giving them food or water, but really what it truly means is any sort of harm. Are they in small confinement? Are like physical abuse? Are you feeding them? Are you giving them water? Are you taking them to the vet? Like, are you doing everything to make sure that that animal, whether it's farm, pet, or just out in the open, are you doing everything you can to make sure that they are okay? There are a lot of penalties that the SPCA in British Columbia has. The maximum one I found is a $10,000 fine for your second offense. Your first offense is between $2,000 to $5,000, which is still pretty pricey. I did not find any jail time. However, it does vary between provinces. Now back to the farm animals. There was an article from Maple Lodge Farms in Huffington Post, Canada, how they, in 2008, had 2,000 birds die of inhumane treatment. A lot of this can be controlled. However, there are weather issues. If animals are loaded and unloaded in freezing temperatures, that can cause a problem, and that's exactly what they had an issue with. Maple Lodge Farms were loading all these chickens to be transported, but they didn't have enough people who were trained properly and who knew how to do this. And they were also charged with 20 counts of inhumane acts and fined $80,000 and found guilty for all of those charges.
To review, for China, we covered their Wildlife Protection Act, the Dog Meat Festival, and how they are the #1 country in many inhumane practices involving animals. In the United States, we mentioned several animal protection acts and laws which are aimed at improving the treatment of animals. We also highlighted the treatment of animals in the major food industries involving the sale of meat and other animal products such as eggs and dairy. Lastly, for Canada, we explained their preventions and penalties for the cruelty to animals and the treatment of farm animals, especially at the Maple Lodge Farms. In conclusion, it is not enough to simply be aware of the acts of animal cruelty around the world.